The air aboard the Vox Eternum was too clean. Sterilized. Scentless. Not a trace of the oil, gunpowder, or sweat Orion Vance had grown used to on Earth. Instead, the alien dreadnought smelled of polished metal and quiet condescension. He walked alone through the docking corridor, polished saws tapping in perfect rhythm. No guards. No translator. No insignia. Just a man in a matte black suit, tailored to perfection, with a silver tie pin in the shape of Earth's continental silhouette. He didn't need a flag. He was the flag. At the end of the corridor, the Council's triad stood waiting, 3 of the galaxy's most powerful generals in full ceremonial armor. High General Tikair, skeletal and towering, shifted his taloned hands behind his back. He was Zarthal, a species of cold tacticians with translucent skin stretched over steel like bone. Beside him, Matriarch Shuria of the Velinari kept a still pose, her 6 eyes blinking asynchronously. She glowed faintly, almost regal. On the far right, Chancellor Harg of the Dromek blinked slowly, all brawn and tusks, dressed in iron-studded leather. The 3 didn't speak. They waited for the human to show weakness. Orion adjusted his cuff. "Gentlemen," he nodded politely. Then, as his eyes swept over the Velinari matriarch, "And madam." Shuria tilted her head, mildly amused. Tikair did not return the courtesy. "You arrive with no security," Tikair said. His voice was dry wind over bone. "A statement?" Orion's smile was polite but sharp. "A convenience. I didn't want to insult your hospitality by implying I'd need protection." Tikair's lip curled barely. They led him into the diplomatic hall, oval, high-vaulted, lined with glass that looked out into a black starfield. The ceiling shimmered with projected constellations. Everything was deliberately oversized, meant to dwarf humanoid visitors. Orion didn't blink. The council table rose from the center of the room like a war altar. Each alien seat was shaped to fit its occupant's physiology. A single human-sized chair sat opposite them, lower than the rest, meant to imply subservience. Orion didn't sit. "You'll find your chair to scale," Shuria said, tone neutral. Orion walked behind it, one hand brushing its back. "In human custom," he said, "it's rude to seat a guest lower than the host. It implies you're expecting to negotiate from a height." Harg snorted. "We are." Orion smiled again, faint and thin. "Then I'll stand. I think better on my feet." He placed a small black device on the table. It chimed once. A miniature holographic Earth bloomed upward, rotating slowly. "This," he said, "is what we're here to protect." Tikair tapped a claw against the table. "You mean discuss. We are here to establish conditions for compliance. Not protection." Orion raised an eyebrow. "Compliance implies guilt. Has Earth committed a crime? You know what this is about," Tikair snapped. "Your colonies defy protocols. You expand where forbidden. You refuse tribute." Orion nodded, patient. "All true. We also built those colonies with our own hands, without council assistance. We fought back the Threx incursion when your fleets retreated. And as for tribute, Earth doesn't pay for permission to breathe." Harg growled. "We don't fear your species. I never said you did." Orion leaned forward, voice steady. "But you invited a negotiator. Not because you wanted peace, because you wanted control. Let me be clear, I didn't come here to ask for peace. I came to offer terms before things get difficult." The room chilled. Shuria's eyes narrowed. "You speak boldly. For a species so young." "Boldness," Orion replied, "is a survival trait on our planet. So is strategy. So is reading a room. Right now, I see a council not looking for negotiation, but a reason. A justification. You want Earth to flinch so you can say, 'Look, they're dangerous. Let's invade.'" Tikair stood. His bones creaked with emotion. "You presume much, human." "I observe much," Orion corrected. He reached into his jacket, not fast enough to be threatening, just deliberate, and placed a data crystal on the table. Shuria activated it with a gesture. It displayed Council fleet movements, 3 ships rerouted near Proxima Outpost, a tactical pattern that mirrored encirclement protocols. TK didn't flinch, but Harg looked sideways at him. I assume those ships are delivering peace pamphlets? Orion asked. Silence. Shuria deactivated the feed. How did you acquire these movements? Orion adjusted his tie. You invited a negotiator. You got one trained by ghosts. Harg shifted uncomfortably. Are you threatening us, Earthman? No, Orion said. I'm offering you a choice. He walked slowly around the table, deliberately placing a hand on each alien's chair as he passed. You can either work with us, humanity. Wild, undiplomatic, irrational humanity. Or, he paused behind TK. You can push us. And discover what happens when the species that invented vengeance writes its own terms. TK turned, eyes blazing. You think we fear death? No, Orion said, stepping into the center again. I think you've forgotten what survival looks like when you're no longer the apex. A long silence settled. Then Shuria spoke softly. This session will resume at first light. We shall consider your offer. Orion gave a slight bow. I'll see myself out. As he walked toward the exit, TK called after him. Why a suit, human? No armor. No weapon. Just fabric. Orion didn't turn. Because you thought I came unarmed. The door hissed shut behind him. Orion Vance stood at the edge of the viewport in his temporary quarters, eyes fixed on the dark starscape beyond. Light from a distant pulsar blinked in slow intervals, steady, deliberate, and eerily synchronized with his thoughts. He didn't sleep. He never did on missions like these. Instead, he ran mental drills. Tactical mapping. Phrase analysis. Emotional recalibration. Everything a man needed to survive when diplomacy was just another battlefield. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, stoic, sharp-jawed, unreadable. A killer wearing civility like a second skin. A soft chime broke the silence. Orion turned. A tray slid in through the wall slot, alien hospitality protocol. No staff. No cameras. Just sterile precision. He eyed the drink first, green, semi-viscous, likely ceremonial. Then the food, faintly steaming cubes of flesh and plant matter he couldn't identify. He didn't touch either. Instead, he opened a concealed compartment on his left cuff and pulled out a microanalyzer the size of a pen cap. A quick scan revealed the drink contained Velnari mind relaxants. Low dose. Enough to fog intuition. They're probing. Not with guns or drones, but chemicals. Subtle. Passive-aggressive. Exactly what he expected. He let the analyzer hum for a moment longer before it beeped. Trace amounts of memory suppressants in the meat. Cute. He dumped the entire tray into the disposal chute, then activated a silent alarm on his wristband. Somewhere in orbit, a human stealth drone received the signal and logged the data. Red flag number 2. The door chimed again, an actual knock this time. He pressed the panel, and it slid open to reveal Matriarch Shuria, flanked by a single guard. She gestured to his quarters. May I? You came without your counsel? I wanted to speak without posturing, she replied. Orion nodded, stepping aside. She moved with fluid grace, the shimmering folds of her robe reflecting soft blues and purples with every step. Her 6 eyes studied him, not with suspicion, but calculation. You're not what they expected, she said. Was I supposed to be shorter? He asked dryly. A faint smile twitched at the corner of her mouth. No. But we anticipated arrogance. Or desperation. Your world stands alone, yet you speak as if it holds the knife. Because it does, he said calmly. You just don't see it yet. She studied him for a long moment. TK believes humanity is dangerous. He's right. You admit it? Not in the way he means, Orion said, sitting across from her. We're dangerous because we adapt. You come at us with lasers, we throw rocks until the rocks explode. You blockade us, We tunnel under your terms and emerge stronger. We don't seek war, but we end it. Shuria tapped her fingers together thoughtfully. You've read every Accord protocol, she said. Your knowledge of our laws exceeds that of most council aides. I memorize patterns for a living. Patterns, or weaknesses? He didn't answer directly. Instead, he opened his datapad and tapped it once. A hologram appeared above the table, grainy footage from a decade earlier. A Velinari outpost in the Larnix belt, under siege. A lone human operative walked through a hail of plasma fire, untouched, eyes cold. When a Dromek commander tried to surrender, the operative simply nodded, and detonated the command bridge anyway. Shuria's breath hitched. You were there? Orion's voice was steady. I was the reason it ended. But that man in the footage, he executed surrendered enemies. They hadn't surrendered, he corrected. They stalled, hoping to trigger their failsafe and bury evidence. We couldn't allow that. So I gave them peace. Human peace. She went silent. The air between them turned still. Finally, she asked, And now? Now I'm here to avoid that version of peace. A long pause. Then she stood, the conversation clearly over. As she reached the door, she glanced back. TK will test you. He believes Earth has no teeth. Orion leaned back. Then he'll bleed learning otherwise. Once alone, Orion returned to the datapad, opened a secure channel, and began uploading. Encrypted burst sent. Log, Velinari attempts soft incapacitation via food. Contact, Shuria showing cracks. TK likely preparing secondary move. He paused, then opened a folder labeled Contingencies. Inside were 12 options. Only 3 had outcomes where Earth didn't retaliate. Hours later, the council reconvened in the central chamber. This time, Orion sat, deliberately leaning back in the too-low chair, looking comfortable. TK wasted no time. Human. Earth's colony on Vega 9 violated the neutral zone. Do you deny this? Orion answered without hesitation. We found ruins. Nothing in your star maps marked it. We claimed salvage rights. You trespassed on Zarthol relics. You didn't list them. Council Law, Article 17, unregistered territory may not be retroactively designated sacred. I'm quoting your own charter. Harg snorted. You humans twist every rule to your gain. Orion met his gaze. No. We just read what you didn't. Shuria observed in silence. TK leaned in. This arrogance, it will doom your world. Orion stood, slow and fluid. You keep threatening doom, General. But I've walked through it. Bled in it. Buried friends under its shadow. If Earth falls, it won't be in silence. It'll drag your stars down with it. He turned to Shuria. We're not here to conquer. We're here to survive. But survival doesn't mean surrender. She held his stare. And, for the first time, nodded slightly. The session adjourned moments later. TKR stormed out. Harg grumbled something about humans and their mouths. Only Shuria lingered, eyes following Orion as he walked away. Back in his quarters, Orion sat alone, watching the stars again. The next move was coming. He could feel it. And he was ready. The door lock on Orion's quarters clicked at 3:14 station time. No alert. No alarm. Just a soft mechanical whisper, like a breath being held. He was already awake, seated at the far corner of the room in the shadows, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled. The moment the vent in the ceiling shifted, he activated his palm-sized countermeasure, a localized EM burst, silent, invisible. A dozen insect-like nanodrones froze mid-descent, dead in the air. They tumbled to the floor with faint clinks, twitching like beetles caught in frost. Orion walked over, crouched, and picked one up. Dromek military tech. Neural disruptors. Meant for quick, messy assassination. Not subtle, not surgical. Sloppy. He slid the drone into a lead-lined pouch, activated a cleaning protocol on the floor, and moved to his terminal. A few strokes of code rerouted the remaining swarm through the hall's air ducts. Destination: Dromek Delegation Quarters. Let them deal with their own mess. An hour later, Chancellor Hard was roaring through the corridors, surrounded by furious guards and a half-scrambled security drone. Sparks sizzled from the wall near his chamber door. The nanodrones had ruptured his ventilation shaft before being neutralized by internal defense systems. He demanded answers. Accusations flew. Orion, of course, was already seated in the council chamber, hands folded, expression calm. "You think I sent those?" he asked mildly. Harg slammed a fist into the table. "Who else? Perhaps the ones who benefit from making Earth look reckless," Orion said smoothly. "Or maybe it's a signal. Someone wants this summit to fail." Matriarch Shuria tapped her clawed fingers against the edge of her seat. "Enough. This chamber will not descend into tribal brawling. We are here for discourse." TKR hadn't spoken yet. His silence was louder than Harg's shouting. Orion turned to him. "You've been quiet, General." TKR's eyes remained locked on the datapad in front of him. "Because I am deciding what to do with a rabid dog." Orion's eyes sharpened. "You should know, General. Rabid dogs don't bark. They bite. Quietly. Efficiently." The room chilled. Back in his quarters, Orion made the call. "Echo 1, he said into the encrypted channel. "Dromek Tech used. Framed hit. Council turning on itself." The voice on the other end was calm. "Authorization for retaliation?" "Negative. Not yet. We need deniability. Next move?" Orion looked at the floor, now spotless. "Let them come again." Hours later, a message came through official channels. A private dinner invitation, TKR's quarters. Uncharacteristically polite. The message ended with a line. "Perhaps Earth would prefer a more candid conversation." Orion accepted. He arrived unarmed, as expected. TKR's chamber was less a room and more a battlefield wrapped in stone, weapon racks along the walls, ritual blades mounted above an obsidian hearth. TKR stood at the far end, arms crossed. "Sit." Orion didn't. "I stand better." "You mock protocol. You mock diplomacy." The Zarthal general stepped closer. "Earth is a speck, Vance. A mistake of evolution. You crawl out of your mud, build toys, and now you pretend to speak as equals?" Orion held his gaze. "We don't pretend. We surpass." TKR's lip curled. "Then prove it." From behind a pillar, a Zarthal warrior emerged, 8 feet tall, armored head to toe, pulse blade humming. Orion didn't flinch. "You invited me to talk," he said. "I invited you to demonstrate your worth," TKR said coldly. The warrior charged. Orion moved once. A step to the side. His hand slipped into his pocket, thumb brushing a trigger. A high-frequency burst emitted from a hidden device sewn into his lapel. The warrior's blade sputtered. His neurovisor blinked erratically. 3 seconds. That's all Orion needed. He pivoted, ducked under the flailing strike, and jabbed a pressure point at the base of the warrior's jaw. The alien collapsed mid-charge, spasming. Orion stood over him, adjusting his sleeve. "I brought peace in a suit," he said. "You brought war in armor. Mine held up better." TKO was still. "Then, you're not a negotiator." "No," Orion said, stepping forward. "I'm what Earth sends when it gets tired of pretending." He tossed a small datachip onto TKR's desk. "Your hidden fleet near Vega? Already intercepted. And Earth didn't send warships in return. We sent observers." TKR narrowed his eyes. "Orbiting now," Orion added. "Each one silent. Watching. Waiting." The general's composure cracked for half a heartbeat. "Then, what do you want?" Orion leaned in. "A new deal. No tribute. No council oversight. Earth is an equal, or not at all. You'll isolate yourselves. We'll survive. We always do." TKR stared for a long time. "Leave my chamber." Orion turned without another word. At the door, he paused. Oh, and if another drone enters my quarters, I'll consider it war. And Earth doesn't lose wars, General. We end them. Later that night, Shuria summoned him. She was alone, her eyes tired. He tried to kill you, she said. Twice, Orion replied. Not very well. She looked away. He believes strength is dominance. I believe strength is knowing when you don't need to dominate. She sighed. He won't stop. You know that. I don't need him to stop. What then? I just need him to be seen. For what he is. The next day, Tikar entered the council chamber late. Orion was already waiting. Calm. Polished. Impossibly precise. A new message blinked on every screen. Anonymous leak. Video feed. Tikar's private quarters. His failed attempt to eliminate the human. His fleet orders. His threats. Shuria read it in silence. Harg's jaw clenched. Orion didn't speak. He didn't need to. Tikar froze. The tables had turned, and the killer in a suit never raised his voice. The room was silent. Tikar's face, once carved from arrogance, now flickered under the weight of exposure. On every council screen, the footage looped again, his private orders, the assassination attempt, the concealed war fleet, broadcast from an anonymous source with council-grade clearance. None of the other generals spoke. Shuria finally broke the silence. This summit was meant to ensure balance, she said, her voice precise. Not treachery, Tikar hissed. You assume this fabrication comes from truth? Orion tapped a finger on the table once. It was enough. The image on the main screen changed. Military authorization codes, matching logs from Zarthal High Command, dates, signatures, encryption layers. Everything authenticated, timestamped, unforgeable. You buried Earth in rhetoric, Orion said. Tried to wrap your fear in protocol. It unraveled. Harg looked from Tikar to the display. You tried to start a war, in secret? Tikar growled, jaw clenched. You're a child species with oversized weapons. No, Orion said, standing. We're a survivor species with long memories. He stepped into the center of the chamber, gaze sweeping the triad. We built civilizations while the council debated semantics. We held off extinction while your fleets withdrew. And when we were invited to speak as inferiors, we came with open hands and contingency plans. He turned to Shuria. We came in peace. But we came prepared to lose the suit and use the knife. Shuria didn't blink. You made your point. No, Orion said. Not yet. He pressed a button on his wrist. A hologram blinked to life, Earth's orbital feed. Dozens of sleek human stealth cruisers surrounded the Vox Eternum. Gasps from aides. Shuria sat straighter. Harg leaned forward. They're not here to attack, Orion said. But if I stop sending heartbeat pulses every 6 minutes, they'll assume the envoy is dead. Tikar surged to his feet. You threaten us now? No, Orion replied, cold and calm. I give clarity. Peace isn't posturing. Peace is earned. And Earth isn't here to be tamed. He deactivated the feed. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was respect born from sharp understanding. Shuria leaned in, voice quiet. What is it you want? A new accord, Orion said. Earth retains full sovereignty. No tribute. No oversight. We will share tech, offer trade, and defend our borders ourselves. And if we refuse? Harg asked. Orion didn't hesitate. Then the next envoy won't wear a suit. Tikar scoffed. You claim to act alone. Yet your world sent fleets? You lie. I was authorized to prevent war. That authorization includes deterrence. Not lies, strategy. He paused. You mistook our silence for compliance. But Earth never kneels. It calculates. Shuria exchanged a glance with Harg. Neither spoke for a full minute. Then she turned to the council scribe. Begin drafting the amendment. Effective immediately. Earth is to be granted independent standing. All hostile fleet movements will cease. TK arose from his chair. You cannot. We can. Shuria cut in. And we will. You failed to break them. Worse, you underestimated them. That is a council failure. Orion stepped closer to TK. You invited a negotiator, he said. You got one. But every word, every step, every silence was measured. Because if we fell here, we'd fall everywhere. He extended a hand, not in peace, but as a final gesture. TK stared at it. Then turned and walked out. Gesture rejected. War avoided. Barely. Hours later, the chamber emptied. Orion remained alone, staring at the projection of Earth still rotating in midair. Small, blue, stubborn. Shuria returned. She watched him for a moment. You played this perfectly. I didn't play, Orion said. She smiled faintly. That's what makes it perfect. Not all of us wanted this outcome, he said. But we couldn't allow weakness to speak for us. Shuria's expression shifted, curious now, rather than cautious. What are you really? She asked. Not a diplomat. Not entirely a soldier. Orion looked at her. I'm the proof that humans are better at peace because we've seen too much war. He picked up the datapad. The hologram vanished. Earth disappeared from the chamber. Next time, he said softly, send someone who actually wants to negotiate. The shuttle detached from the Vox Eternum, quiet against the void. Orion leaned back in his seat, suit jacket pressed and clean again. The Earth fleet began vanishing into cloak range, one ship at a time. Silent. Patient. Watching until the last possible moment. Behind him, the galaxy adjusted its balance. Not with battles, but with one human's presence. No raised voice. No drawn blade. Just a killer in a suit. Mission complete.